Hi guys, and welcome to another episode of Marketing in the Madness. Now, if you haven't joined us before, you are joining for a fantastic episode because today we're going to be talking to someone from one of my favourite platforms, LinkedIn, and actually one of my favourite resources on the platform, the B2B Marketing Institute, because if you don't know, although I talk about all sorts of marketing, I am a B2B marketing, well, I'm not pro, but that's my area of specialism. And I work with a lot of tech companies in the B2B marketing space. So without further ado, welcome to, I'm going to hopefully say your name right. I feel like we've got like a similar name going on here.
Yeah, I was thinking earlier that we should probably have an agency together at some point, which would have its own like jingle of
Yes.
like, street and sweet. They're the people you want to meet.
Yeah. Oh, I love this. Oh, okay. We're gonna make that. So Jennifer Shaw Sweet. I keep wanting to say Jennifer Shaw Street. So yeah. Shaw. We're going to be called Street Shaw Sweet or something like that.
Yeah.
This is the future agency. It's coming. Best B2B marketing agency you've ever engaged with.
Can you imagine?
But can you tell, for those that don't know, and if you're in B2B marketing, you should know, guys, because honestly, it is the place to go. Well, to steal your slides. And actually, I've got you referenced on my website. So tell me a little bit about you and your role at LinkedIn and the B2B Marketing Institute.
So yesterday I hit my 5th year anniversary at LinkedIn and at the B2B Institute. So it makes me one of the longer timers there. But the B2B Institute is a think tank funded by LinkedIn. It was set up because what we realized, or what Jan Schwartz, who set it up, realized with a whole group of a gang of people at LinkedIn at the time, was that there wasn't really a major marketing textbook for B2B, and there wasn't really a big resource for really studying how B2B marketing works. And client by client, there were little tiny bits of research, but business by business, that wasn't consolidating anywhere. There aren't any courses in B2B marketing in any universities. It's just not an area where there's been a huge amount of fieldwork and study. And so the intention of the B2B Institute was to sort of write the textbook as we flew it. That was the kind of catchphrase when I joined. When I joined, it didn't have a name. It wasn't called the B2B Institute. It wasn't called anything. It was just, we've got a project. You want to join LinkedIn and have a go at this project. So it was a pretty wildfire for like the first year, especially because it's also the first year of the pandemic. So to join then and go in thinking, oh, we're going to do all of these events this year, and we had a plan for Cannes and like all of that kind of stuff. And then straight away we were into how do we pivot? And actually that's the story of our research moving forward as well, which has been what is the greatest need in B2B marketing as far as what's unknown, what's a known unknown mostly, and then where can we put our resources to partner with major universities, people like the Ehrenberg Bass Institute, with WARC, so the sort of big organizations, the IPA, to really test what's known about marketing and then B2B marketing. And actually then we do fieldwork with our clients, with LinkedIn's largest clients, as part of something called the EDGE program, which is a consultancy program, to actually test and apply to their business what we've learned from the research. So it's really large data set research. LinkedIn, obviously, one of the biggest, most reliable data sets actually I've ever seen, and the ability to then use a lot of that data to help customers really improve their outcomes is like one of the things that we do. And then we publish the research. Obviously, it's, you know, open source publishing. You can download any of the papers, and all of the team that I work with, we all rock up at various industry events and present the research, because as we were saying before we started, 180 pages is a lot to read in a paper. And so very nice to be able to have someone just tootle up for 20 minutes and tell you about it. The digestible version.
I'm actually really envious of you. I mean, I love running my own business, but I'm super envious of your job because you've just got, I don't know, you get to see everything. You're at the forefront of B2B marketing.
Yes, I can't believe I've got the job most of the time. I often thank my boss, Mel, like, oh, Hi, Mel. And now we've had since the end of December, a new head of the B2B Institute globally, Caroline. And I'm literally so grateful because it's so interesting to be able to hop into all of these different verticals in B2B. It's the most diverse sort of area of business you could work in. And just to be able to just study whether it works, what works, and then actually be able to influence those businesses to grow and to be more resilient as businesses. I think that's my main focus is, how do you help the business to continue having a trajectory or continue to grow in the long term? And protect jobs, protect livelihoods. It's really exciting.
Yeah, I mean, of course, what I really want to dig into are the trends, the things that you guys believe, based on all the research, we should be focusing our time and attention on, and the tactics, etc., that we should be using.
Yeah.
But before we do that, what I want to know, why do you think B2B marketing is, excuse my French, kind of thought of as the shit version of marketing? Because it kind of is, isn't it?
I think it's treated really roughly.
Yeah.
Why is B2B marketing like that? I think we did a bit of a sort of inquiry about this at the IPA for a while, to really sort of ask B2B marketers and B2B agencies, why it was given sort of such a rough deal. Because I love it. Like, I think B2B marketing is really fascinating. I come from a B2B, B2C background. I come from an agency background where I worked on both at quite a sort of large, sort of big and international level. And what I find really interesting is that a lot of it stems from where B2B came from, B2B marketing came from. So we know for B2C, the big marketing companies, they're B2C marketing companies, in essence, like the Unilevers, the Procter & Gambles, are very marketing-led organisations. And so they are almost businesses that had marketing first and sales second. Whereas the thing I would observe about B2B in the majority is that B2B businesses have grown, marketing has grown out of sales. And it's almost held that history of being beholden to sales, reporting into sales, and having a proximity to the sales number that perhaps the sort of big FMCGs and the B2C companies escaped. They came in first with setting the agenda, setting prices, they owned the Ps. Whereas in B2B, the sort of the Ps around pricing and product and people and all of those things are very much kind of still within the sort of main core of the business. And so I think that history really affects us. And then I also think that the timescales, the size of deals in B2B mean that it's very different. And the psychology of B2B, where we're talking to groups of people, not just individuals, the scale of the decision in B2B tends to be greater, with a lot more of a sort of burden of responsibility around it. And so if the salesperson was honest, they would say it's a very emotional decision. But when everyone wants to look grown up and proper in B2B, they'll often say it's a rational decision. B2B decision was rational. On behalf of the company, I made a rational decision based on all of these product features. And the reality is, on behalf of the company, I made an emotional decision based on not getting fired or based on believing that these are the most trustworthy people for us to deal with. It's just as valid a decision. I'm not saying the decisions are wrong, but it's very hard to tell your company that you made a decision because we all trust these people and we've all agreed we like them the most. It's much easier to say it's listing out the boring product features. So we start to believe that the product features are what won it, and they didn't.
I love that, because that is my whole approach to B2B marketing is, make it human. Gone are the days where, we need to be, no offense to your lovely slides, but where we need to be producing these, design-led, information-based, product-led slide decks or graphics for LinkedIn or wherever it might live and breathe. Now, for me, everything has to be human. So it's human to human, or as I'm kind of branding it up, person to person, because people buy from people. However you look at this, people want to buy from someone that they trust and a business that they trust. And therefore, by putting your people front and center with your marketing, which lots and lots of B2B companies are, businesses are still behind on. Businesses are often, I would love your opinion on this actually, businesses I feel are often still marketing to businesses as a business, which makes it hard for them to buy them or engage with them or resonate with them, because as humans we want to engage with humans. It comes from birth. Babies want to see other people's faces and they'll smile. When they're very, very young, they'll smile at your face and look in your eyes, and that doesn't go away. And that's I am sure why LinkedIn have launched the fantastic video feed, which again is very people centered. It's people talking to camera or on video like we are now.
I think you're right, but I think what's interesting about it is it's not that the product doesn't matter. It's not that the business need doesn't matter. It's the fact that we sometimes detach that what we're producing is solving a problem. We're there for a reason. We don't engage in business because we all like sitting in an office. It's because we're achieving something together. And when we're trying to sell something to people, and this is why I find it mind-boggling that sales and marketing can't often, don't agree on this. But actually, if you get to the essence of sales, it's problem solving together. It's very rarely actually selling. And most of the time it's finding the connection between what I've got that can fix something for you. And when we really understand on a human level the customer's real need, the real issue that they've got, it's I think when we were at the conference the other day, I was making a very silly joke about, you're not selling accounting solutions, you're selling the fact that, I can't remember the name, it's Terry or something, in finance has just quit to go and retire in Marbella and they are irreplaceable. Actually what you're trying to do is to solve the fact that it's the year end and we need to do our accounting. That real solution, that human problem is our job, is the job of the marketer, to really understand those needs, those need states, those category needs, or those, we look at category entry points, that moment where you're going to need to think of a solution, and that's the solution I want to be thought of. That's where the marketer should be putting their products and services. And that's incredibly human, because we're going to swear, the fuck up in the business that needs to be fixed is where we should be putting the memories of our brands, the thought of our brand. And that's so practical. It is really kind of business-like. There's no kind of fluff in that. I'm not saying, shove your logo on the back of a Formula One car because we all love Formula Ones and humans love Formula Ones. I'm saying, actually, shove your logo on a need state, really connect with the usefulness of what you are, because what we know is that those are the brands, the useful brands, the useful things that connect on an emotional level are the ones that are remembered and bought continually. And it's a much harder sell to come out with a whole load of product attributes for someone to remember versus an emotional solution or a fix that is going to make you a hero in the office because you thought of it. You remembered it just when everyone needed it.
Yeah.
When hopefully Terry's having an amazing time whooping it up in Marbella.
Oh, I want to go with Terry.
The best retirement. Go, Terry.
Go on, Terry.
Absolute dream. But yeah, we've just got to kind of reframe and work out, we spend a lot of time, my colleague Derek spends an incredible amount of time focusing just on category entry points so that we can really understand industry by industry, what are the motivations that drive that industry forward, that drive that business forward. Because once you can actually start as a marketer to quantify the size of need, there are commercials behind that. There are really hard business numbers, cash numbers behind, is there a need state in my category that currently isn't resolved, that there isn't a brand associated with it, where there are still large amounts of need in there. And in some of the categories that we've looked at, people don't talk about price. They're literally talking about solving that problem. There's huge amounts of money on the table without a tiny little quibble over the price over it. And I think that that's very unique to B2B, because at the moment we've got very commoditized categories with very human, unbranded needs. And a brand that attaches itself to that need, that's able to become famous around that need state, will then own that subcategory.
Yeah, I mean, that is a mistake that I see lots of businesses make, is they try to market the big thing. So for instance, a lot of my clients are in the digital transformation space.
Yeah.
So they'll be marketing digital transformation, which is huge and hard to buy because it's like, oh, why do I need to digitally transform?
Yeah.
If they spoke about, isn't it frustrating when you have to upload the same things, you have to do something 7 times to get it to work on your website or whatever it might be.
Yeah, or it doesn't fit in the stack.
Yeah, or whatever it might be.
Really big problems that people face every day.
Yeah, but like the actual problem, market that, talk about that. It's such a simple change.
Yeah.
Think about, I mean, this is how we work with all of our clients. Like, think about what are the things that are keeping your prospects up at night? What are the challenges? What are the various different triggers that they might hit, or the problems which is often why, especially when it comes to digital transformation, why people may go, we need a new platform, or we need to change our stack, or we need to look at a new supplier, or whatever it might be. And what are those things? Not the big, we need to do a digital transformation. Like, why do they need to do a digital transformation? And literally changing your marketing messaging from that big piece to those small problems is the game changer.
Yeah. And the way that you do it is your brand. The way that you fulfill like the purpose of your business is your brand. It's the promise. My colleague Mimi has spent the last sort of year and a half really drilling everyone on like the promise of the category. What's the promise that you're making as a business that defines your position in your category? And that promise has to be about your business. It has to be about how you serve your customers, rather than, a sort of weird mission statement that's like completely detached from actually what are we trying to do? How do we solve this for you? That's the umbrella element. That's the element that could be, digital transformation are us. It doesn't, but digital transformation are us needs to tell us how to transform, how to apply it. And actually, do you know what? It makes the connection between brand and ABM much easier to navigate, because actually what you're navigating is the messy middle that everyone says they're totally confused about. What do I do? Where does my customer go in the messy middle? In the messy middle, your customer's learning how they're going to solve problems in your category because they're your category customer.
Oh, love this.
It's fun, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like when we actually get into the sort of like the weeds of marketing, they're not that weedy. We're like little salmon swimming through. It's going to be fine.
I think B2B marketing, and like I said, it's seen as the kind of boring baby brother. I'm going to say brother because it begins with B and it's alliteration, and I like that, to marketing.
Yeah.
But actually, it's bloody brilliant. There's so much psychology.
There's so much in it. Also, I would say it's the only potential really big boom in marketing, because at the moment, people are only spending a fraction of what they could be spending on marketing. I think it's 1% versus 10% at best. So there's a lot of money still on the table. It's achieving a lot less than it could be, because those fractional tiny marketing spends means that even the biggest brands are capable of becoming much bigger brands and owning real percentages of categories. So there's a huge market share opportunity in B2B. And as I said, commoditized categories are crying out for a brand to kind of rescue them and actually drive those categories forward into like a productive future. And then I also think in B2B, the third sort of element of that is pricing. Once you have a strong brand, you can really start to understand the difference in pricing between commoditized competition for price versus actually taking hold of the category, leading it into the future, and actually having a margin to write home about to your finance director. And I actually think through all of that, and actually in particular in pricing, we get business resilience. So rather than being, we see B2B businesses sort of live through this very short sort of business arc, 2-3 times the customer life cycle. And if you're not getting renewals after that, you're in trouble, especially with software. And actually, those really long-term brands are the things that hold everything together. And we need that. Businesses need that. You need to be buying from a company that's going to be there in 18 months' time. So it's actually really important to have these strong brands, because that's what you can build your business on as a buyer.
So I've got a question on that.
Yeah.
We've delved into brand, which I love. How important is the brand of the business in comparison to the brand of your people?
Ooh. So I don't think the two are separate. I think your people often are the brand of your business for a start. So they are your brand spokespeople. They are often, in the case of like particularly enigmatic chairmen, they are your brand icon. You know, they are the physical embodiment of a brand. And in particular, when we look at things like consultancy businesses or businesses where the value of the company goes up and down in the lift, or used to go up and down in the lift, it logs on at home these days. But in those cases, those personalities are the brand. They have to be able to execute it. They have to be walking the walk, talking the talk. And we should be furnishing them with the assets of the brand to live and breathe it. And I think for other B2B businesses that are less human-centered, they're producing more products, then in that case, the brand is very much more something where we need to bring some humanity to it in this ability to be useful, to be able to connect to why you would need them. Like, I trust my consultants to explain why I need them, but actually when I look at maybe a software business, for example, or a shipping business, then I really need to understand how I'm going to solve problems within the insight within my own company to be able to really think of that brand first when I'm into a buying situation. The role of brand is to be easy to remember. And so in all of those cases, consistency is king.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, we were talking about this earlier, weren't we?
Yeah.
Which is one of the stats probably that alerted me to the B2B Marketing Institute, way back when, probably not that long after, because it was the lovely Andy Lambert, who also is definitely worth a follow, guys. If you don't,
Legend.
Yeah, he's an absolute legend. His social media updates on LinkedIn are bloody brilliant. And this kind of dials into that consistency piece, is a stat that you guys, and I'm probably going to say it wrong, but you can correct me afterwards, is 95% of the people that you that are in your market to buy you, probably don't need to buy you on the day that you're trying to sell them something. So by showing up in a salesy way and just trying to push a sale on that one particular day and not having any ongoing marketing consistency, what you're doing is you're losing 95% of your audience because they don't need you on that day.
Yeah.
Whereas if you educate them and you continue to be consistent and show up talking about those need states and the problems that we know that they're, potentially having in that messy middle, like we said, they may not need you today. They may not need you next year.
Yeah.
They may not need you in 2 years, but in the third year, they might. So I think, again, in the world of B2B, and I can put hand on heart say this because I've had, not most of my clients now absolutely respect this, and I'm very careful about, the pre-sales amble that I have with them to make sure that they do understand this. And our clients today really, really do, is, there are some short-term wins that you can get, but if you're only ever focused on the short-termisms, you're missing the biggest part of the pie, because that 95% don't need you on that day.
Yeah. The data comes from the work of the Ehrenberg Bass Institute, and we did a partnership project with them called How B2B Brands Grow, where we actually tested the 95-5 rule with Professor John Dawes, who's Mr. 95-5 rule. It's brilliant. He's an amazing person, also great to follow. And I think what's really interesting about it as an insight is what we're talking to a lot of the time, especially with things like ABM and B2B, we're talking to people as they are evaluating a decision in the sort of 3 months of that decision. So per quarter, you're selling to one group of people, which is around 5%. It goes up and down depending on the industry and the life cycle, the buying cycle of the industry. The 95% haven't made up a decision who they're ever going to buy from in the future, but they're in category. So they're already resonant. They're already highly attuned to hearing messages about the category that they're one day going to buy from, because they don't want to get fired. It's that easy. They want to be good at their job. They don't want to get fired. So they want to pick the right solutions in the future. So those people, they just need to know that you do that kind of thing. It's very much a brand audience, very much a brand message. But what's really interesting is how it affects the short term as well. Because that tipping point moment of being remembered, when people get into that hot spot of needing you, if they've been sort of preempted, if they've been preloaded with the right memories, think of your brand first. And it's really hard for your competitors to interrupt that buying period, that next 3 months. And that's why I think brand can be such a winner, because in that 3 months, if also they're evaluating a purchase, the brand work will still favour. The brand work will still come to your rescue, because it's still part of the group evaluation of your company as well. The fame level of your brand that gives people confidence that the buyer has just made the right decision.
Yeah.
And I actually now think, and I think this is something that we're going to be looking at, probably we're talking about trends, but actually when we're looking much more long-term into the long-term future, when we look at things like end user confidence, when we look at business and buyer group confidence, which we've done a load of studies on as well, but actually when we're looking at that buying group audience in B2B, it's becoming really important. It's becoming actually the tipping point between, am I going to take the risk in going with this supplier versus I have full confidence that this is the supplier everyone's going to approve of? And that's a no-brainer decision. And as much as we'd love our buyers to be risk takers and go for the wacky choice that's going to make a massive business difference, a lot of the time, unless you reframe that business difference as missing out on something that everyone else agrees on, people are going to go with the safer option, which is the brand that's known best. So getting your brand fame right, I think, is really key.
Yeah, I love that you've said that, because so many people, and you see this on various different social media platforms, numbers don't matter, fame doesn't matter. It absolutely does.
It really does.
At the end when you're making that decision, because and this is why I am so consistent on LinkedIn, and why I really push our marketing team to continue to create, fun, interesting, helpful content from the Street brand, and also for this podcast, is because I know that when I walk into a room and I'm pitching up against two or three other B2B marketing agencies for, I don't know, lead gen event campaign for whatever tech company we're pitching to, we're 3-4 steps ahead of them because they're quiet.
Yeah.
No one knows who they are. They don't trust them. They don't have any prior relationship. Whereas I go into the room and people have been engaging with our content for X amount of time. They already think that they know me and they trust me before I've even ever met them. And that gives me such an advantage. And it's probably why we have, compared to most companies, a much higher opportunity to win ratio. We probably convert 60 to 70% of our deals, probably even higher than that at the moment. And often we don't even pitch up against anyone because no one's talking about the exact same things as us. So I think it's so important. People think, no, it doesn't matter, or it's not delivering for me. Not only does it attract and bring people into the funnel for you, but it gives you a huge advantage when you're at the end of that funnel and you're trying to convert the deal.
And it's really interesting how, so we cover quite a lot of this in how B2B brands grow and the advantage of being the biggest player in the category or the loudest voice in the category. You don't have to actually be the biggest, you have to look like the biggest.
Yeah, that's what I'm doing.
Which is scary. But I think the other thing that I find really interesting is when we start to measure it. So when we start to measure the effects of being a bigger brand or being a louder brand, having that excess share of voice, that means that you're growing your presence in the category. What we can also see is the effects that it has across different parts of the business. So it's not just affecting the marketing results of people's responses to your advertising, but as you're finding it, it affects your sales results as well. And then weirdly, because we're LinkedIn and we can see the data, we could also see it affects your talent results as well. So you can actually attract much more valuable talent to your company because you're a bigger brand, and so you feel like more of a sort of tick on the CV. And I think that's so interesting because when we're measuring that and reporting into the finance department, those extra ticks that feel very nice on a sort of marketing balance sheet or a dashboard become financially really, really valuable. Speed of sale, friction of sale being improved saves sales time that can then be reallocated elsewhere to get more sales in the future, or have a less exhausted sales force, which means they're much nicer people to talk to and they're more effective as salespeople. It increases enthusiasm in the business. Your people must walk into every pitch, like literally strutting their stuff. That completely changes, that attitude completely changes how they're going to be perceived. That confidence of walking in from a company that everyone has heard of really changes the body language of the company. And then also when we're looking at just the money that's saved on talent, the money that's saved on not having to replace people because they've been attracted by a bigger brand, like that is absolute literal, it's gold. It's the cash that, the finance director stays up at night over. And more and more our research and our measurement is focused on how do we show the rest of the business the value that marketing brings. Because as a cheerleader for marketers, which I definitely would say is probably top of my job description, is cheerleading for really good marketing and marketers and their careers, then a huge part of really being able to measure and prove that effectiveness, well, it gets me out of bed in the morning, but it also is the sort of thing that means that marketers have a longer tenure and more time to prove themselves. Give them the chance of the 95%, give them the chance of the 3-year sales cycle that we have in B2B. Don't imagine that in the next 3 months there's going to be a miracle, because there's not. That's beholden. If there is a miracle, it will be a miracle in the economy, in the context of where we're marketing, possibly even in the category in which we're marketing. That's where you see the 3-month trajectory. But as far as share and the business is concerned, that's a long play game. And so marketers need to be given the longer time to be able to make that impact.
I think once you do it, this is how I kind of see it for us and how I pitch it to our clients, is it's like a snowball.
Yeah.
That first year, you're going to start with quite a small snowball, but over time, it might turn into quite a meaty snowman with a head. And it just keeps rolling and building. So once you start this, and it might take a year for you to start to see real results.
Yeah.
But year 2, year 3, then you just don't stop. You continue to invest. All of the stats that you've just, evidenced show that this is the way to go. So you've just got to get started and you've got to keep going. And I think
trajectory is king. Like, we really have to make sure, maybe, if consistency is king, then trajectory is queen. But I think the other thing that I recognize is that sounds like an impossible dream to a lot of marketers. To be given even 6 months to prove yourself or to prove the campaign is working to the rest of the business often sounds really, really like we're living in dreamland. And so I think the area of study, the area of research that I'm really, really interested in as we sort of move ahead, and that we've done sort of initial pieces of work that have been very encouraging on, is understanding how in the short term we can see a longer term effect, a longer term trajectory. And so that's where we're looking at things like the impact on search. So in the short term of a campaign, I can see the top line. If you think of it like a musical score, you can see the top line response to a campaign. You can see people liking stuff. You can see people getting into the campaign. You can see responses, shares, all of those kind of things in digital. And you can hear the word of mouth on the street. We're hot stuff right now. We're running a really exciting marketing campaign. Even in B2B, it's, everyone in, machine tools is really excited about us this week. And then what you need to look at is the baseline. So you can do the top line, the melody of the campaign is what you're doing right now. The baseline is, how are we changing sentiment about us? How are we changing recall? How are we changing where the brand levels back down to? Because that longer term pitch is your brand. That longer term baseline is actually the business thrum, because it's much more reflective of how often people need you. And that's your 95.5 as it flows, as it churns through business all the way through the year. Every quarter, you've got that 5% coming into needing you. And so I'm really keen on measuring not necessarily just the searches, but where the searches return to as far as the proportion that my brand or the brand that I'm working on deserves or gets. And then from that, really measuring the improvement on that number. So really quick, you can pretty much in the first 3 months, really understand how you're impacting your share of search or your share of intended future market. And then the other thing I'm really interested in is sales. Actually making sales teams my ally. Because if I can do that for the businesses that I work with, they will have a friend in the boardroom. They'll have another voice in the boardroom pitching for them. So how we report to sales on things like marketing qualified leads, sales qualified leads, but also on things like speed of sale, friction of sale, key elements of the campaign that are being fed back to sales as people come in as future prospects. And things like, and this is something we look at very much with our clients on LinkedIn, things like how easy is it to make a sort of connection request? Has the response to those connection requests or those in-mail requests really improved? How are things working on Sales Navigator? You know, are we seeing much more kind of cohesion and people wanting to hear from us? That's a in the first 12 weeks response that you can see in a campaign, sometimes 6 weeks, and being able to see that instant effect of a long-term intention. That's gold. Like that's money on the table that you can actually start to put that into the balance sheet of an expectation of how marketing is transforming the business, transforming the trajectory of how we're growing.
Yeah, I mean, marketing is, and sales for me is everything when it comes to business. If you don't have it, your business is not going to exist for very long.
No, but you just have a product. You better.
It doesn't exist.
Yeah.
It doesn't. No one's buying it because you've not marketed it and you've not sold it. So I think, you know, that is it. As much as we get, you know, canned by sometimes, you know, the C-suite or in these board meetings, I do think.
Oh no. I have an analogy for this, which I'm very fond of and is deeply silly,
Go on.
which is that marketing is the difference between a unicorn and a pony that's head-buttered in ice cream. Because marketing, put it all together and it's actually going to go somewhere. You've actually thought about in marketing, hopefully if it's done well, the customer and the audience and who the heck you're going to sell this thing to. It's the full package. If you just have a lovely pony, you can't just shove a cornetto on it, or any other brand of ice cream will do. But you can't just shove an ice cream on its head and think that it's going to take off. You've got to get the package together, you know, ideally with wings. But, you know, it's a really, really big difference. And, you know, we spend a lot of time talking to VCs about how they evaluate whether a company is good to work with or not. And a lot of it is to do with how together was the marketing, how well known is it in the category and trusted, how much trajectory has it got, how much potential has it got to grow. And all of that comes from marketing.
Honestly, this is like my favourite ever podcast. Sorry to all my other guests, but it so is. Right, I don't want to ask trends because it feels like it's belittling everything that you've just said, because this isn't trends. It's psychology, it's science, it's doing marketing bloody brilliantly. But when it comes to 2025, where should people be focusing their attention when it comes to B2B marketing?
I think the really, really big things that I have been really thinking about a lot are things like your buying audience, your buying committee. I think there's going to be a really, really big trend around that, largely because we're not the only people doing the research on it. We've got a lovely body of research on it, and we also have a lot of research on who is in the buying committee, but also big companies. I don't think I'm allowed to name most of them, but there are some very, very big companies that are looking at what happens if you plus 3. So if you communicate to the buyer plus the 3 people around that buyer that influence a buying decision, and you do that within the 60 days of evaluation or the 60 days before you think they're going to make a purchase, how do you help them with their buying decision by making it popular? And the research from that is coming back as extraordinarily effective. Like, it seems to be making a huge difference in sales outcomes. So yeah, where you can see people like eyebrows raising over the amount of change, the amount of money on the table, or the amount of difference that it's making, then I think that's going to be a trend we won't be able to ignore. Everyone will talk about AI, so I'm not even going to brush into AI, other than I actually hope this year that we all get used to the AI and stop waiting. Because my concern with AI over the last few years is it's actually been the trepidation that's the problem, not the AI, that people have held back on making hiring decisions. They've held back on making production decisions, on getting on with it. And this has to be the year where the stagnancy, as people are learning about AI, we have to get over that. We have to just get on with it, because we don't need any reason to hold us back in marketing. Getting it done is the job. Like, we need to just get it out there, get it done, as we were saying, like, make our brands really famous. And then I think the other thing that I'm really obsessed with at the moment is how we measure effectiveness. And in particular, how we use our measurement of effectiveness to be bolder in the marketing that we do. So I talk a lot with a lot of sort of research colleagues about experiments, and really getting excited about the kind of experiments that we can start to validate to a point where the experiment helps us understand what the future outcomes could be if we amplified it, if we did it more, did some of that behaviour more broadly. So I think we're going to start to see a culture of some braver experiments, but also experiments attached to econometrics that actually start to help us really understand like what the business value we're bringing to, and really make that kind of almost the reason for the experiment in the first place is, where am I generating business value by doing something brave, by doing something different? And rather than it just being a gamble, like how educated is my bet? And I really love that as a direction for us to take as businesses, because it's almost about like preemptive measurement, or, you know, really setting out our markers for what we're looking for much better. And I think from that we get business confidence, because all of that measurement, the role of it is to be able to, you know, run singing, skipping into the finance team and just go, look what we can do. Look at the opportunity that's out there. Look how excited we are. And this is how much we need to expend to get something around this result. Always triangulate your expectations, but like really being able to think mathematically about it, I think gives us gravitas, it gives us something really interesting to talk to businesses about. But it also starts to turn marketing as a function far more into this sort of generator of opportunity for businesses, which I think is the most exciting thing we could do.
When it comes to measurement,
I
have to ask, because I want to ask the questions that, you know, that are going to help me, which hopefully is going to help our listeners. Are there any tools? Obviously, LinkedIn has got some fantastic,
gorgeous,
and actually it's always getting better. I noticed there's been quite a few updates actually, even in the past couple of weeks. But are there any measurement tools that you go to from a marketing point of view? What would you recommend for listeners to go and use?
I'm a big fan of like MMM and Nielsen, or having a research partner. You know, you've got System 1 for creative, you've got Kantar for really understanding sort of business impacts and things like that. So I'm a big fan of that. But I think the other thing that I would always be looking at is really measuring my level of reach. So like I'm slightly obsessed with understanding efficiency, evenness of reach, like how well am I reaching people consistently through the year, and really understanding. So I will do a huge TAM calculation pretty much with most of our customers. We will do a big, how many people are there in the category to sell to, and how many of those people are we reaching over a quarter, over a year. And what you tend to find is that actually your category audience is much bigger than you ever imagined. There's a lot more opportunity out there. Really understanding the difference between large businesses that can buy from you, small businesses that buy from you, the frequency with which those small businesses churn, the middle ground sort of businesses that are, you know, really in growth, like understanding and growing with them. So I would be looking at all of those things, that really having a very strong, fluid TAM calculation that I'm checking in on how I'm reaching is like literally step number one of the year. If I'm kicking off the year, I'm like, where's the money?
Love that.
Who are we going after?
I mean, there's a couple of things that you've said there. One, from when we were talking about focus and trends, I loved, by the way, so many of my clients go, we only want to market to CTOs or CMOs or, you know, CDOs, whatever it might be. So that's, you know, chief technology officers or chief marketing officers or chief digital officers, whoever it might be. And they won't, if we don't get those people to engage with the campaigns or attend the events that we're putting on, they're flat no. So I'm going to send them a clip from this recording saying the +3 rule, because there are stats out there. I think maybe you even presented them. There's 7 or 8 people, even +7, more than 7 people involved with the buying decision. So you don't need to influence one person.
Yeah.
You have got to influence. And that was really interesting where you spoke about, you know, how that is the companies that are really growing their sales and marketing. That's what they're doing, that kind of +3 effect. I absolutely love that. There's so much for us to learn about what's going on in the world of marketing, and doing your own research, deep research, and actually starting to evaluate things more deeply that's where we get the insights and the growth and the...
And it's also where the business starts to see marketing as the job of marketing, which is the voice of the customer in the business. As much as I value everyone else who talks to a customer, sales, customer, you know, interaction and the complaints division, you know, whoever else is talking to the customer, they're only ever talking to them in a specific state of mind. Sales, it's a really tough conversation because there's always at the back of your mind, I'm going to have to negotiate a price. So that you get a very different side of your customer. When you've got anyone dealing with customer services, they're often dealing with complaints rather than joy. So they're not really tapping into why people bought from you in the first place and what their real expectations are going to be in the future, or what you could sell to them next. They're dealing with problems. So they're really important and insightful. I would be going to those people to understand, how is our product used? But marketing needs to be the owner of customer insight and the real owner of that information. And it's where growth comes from, because the customer insight will also tell you what you're not doing, what your product isn't able to solve. And that's where the business should be moving in the future, if it's big enough, if it's worth the investment.
Now, my last question.
Oh, yeah.
I could literally interview you for about 3 hours. So.
We have a lovely chat, don't we?
Yeah, I love it. Because I know that you're going back to present at LinkedIn after this. Can you give our lovely listeners one kind of tip, focus, something that they should be doing on LinkedIn?
As a human on LinkedIn rather than as a business?
I mean, either. Whatever you think is most important.
I think as a marketer on LinkedIn, really using it to engage in listening, not just telling, and really gaining. There are so many insights in what people are talking about on LinkedIn about categories. So really, I think it's a great place for category understanding. And I think the other thing is really understand what your customer would list as your competitors, not who you think your competitors are. So I think we often sit in a mini category delusion or subcategory delusion where we think our competitors are the people that we would list that are businesses like us. And so you can imagine that your category is, us and 6 other companies. Whereas actually, if you look at your customers or the people who could be buying what you sell, a lot of the time they will list companies that are enormous, tiny companies, a whole mixture of different people who could provide a solution, not necessarily the product that you're selling. And so really understanding what your broadest category definition could be, I think is a gift on LinkedIn, because you can really start to see that, and you can start to really also see the size of competition or the size of opportunity that's out there. So yeah, I would use LinkedIn for, really understanding and hunting down that opportunity. It's such a great place to do business. As a human, the best thing on LinkedIn, someone told me, is an insight. So I get really nervous about posting anything on social media because, I'm not an idiot. But a lot of the time I sort of sit there and I go, oh, I know I've got to post something because I work for LinkedIn. I must say something somewhere. And firstly, you never need to post anything. You don't have to say anything. It's much more important. Actually, I find some of the best conversations I have with people on LinkedIn are actually responding to things they've said. I'm much more friendly as a responder. But what I would also say, and the wonderful Tom Roach said this to me a while ago, that he says this to his colleagues, which is, don't worry about it. If it's good, it might take off, it might get ignored. If it's rubbish, it'll die and no one will ever see it. So don't worry about it. And so I thought that was the most lovely, incredibly Tom piece of advice. And it's such a good piece of advice. Don't worry about it. If it's rubbish, it'll disappear.
Yeah, no one will see it anyway.
Don't say anything nasty. Of course, LinkedIn doesn't like the algorithm will kill it anyway. But actually, if you really, have something on your chest, say it, burn it out, get it out there. And obviously, LinkedIn is the place to do business. It's turn up as your best self.
Yeah, honestly, those tips are absolutely brilliant. And you've given me some really good ideas. One of the jobs I'm now going to do is I'm actually going to go and recheck, because we've changed quite a bit as a business. I'm going to go recheck, because it tells you who the people similar to you, people also viewed, and the same with companies on our company page. Yeah. I'm going to go check that out. I'm also going to speak to all of our clients and say, apart from us, when you're talking to someone about a project, who do you see?
Yeah.
And then I'm going to go and research them all on LinkedIn and see what they're doing.
Yeah. And it's often, it might not be an agency. It might be, I read The Economist.
Yeah.
It might be something that the breadth of solutions that people consider is really underestimated.
Yeah.
And being first to mind is how you win. So how do you position yourself so that you're first to mind, so that you're remembered really well? So I think that's where things are going. And then a lot of us are publishing stuff on memory at the moment. I think there are about 4 agencies with publications on it. We're going to be publishing something on memory. We're fundraising for the Alzheimer's Society as part of our publication. And I absolutely recommend, if anyone gets a chance, to donate to them. You know, we're all in the business as marketers, in the memory business, but also we're in the business of, you know, the human brain. And if we can get more understanding of the human brain for the longevity of our own benefits as human beings, then all the better. And helping the Alzheimer's Society, they do an amazing job. We're fundraising in the UK and the US alongside our memory publication.
Oh, that's especially as I was talking with our lovely producer earlier about dementia, because my dad's got dementia and our lovely producer's grandfather passed away over Christmas. So very close to my heart. Can I ask, so we've talked about so many different things, including that, if there's anywhere people can donate or get involved in this kind of memory campaign and supporting the Alzheimer's Society, can you give me all the links? And I promise, guys, everything we've spoken about, including the awesome people that we have referenced, we'll put their LinkedIn profiles in there, including ours, but we'll reference a lot. And I'll also obviously put a reference to the B2B Marketing Institute, where people can go and find all of the fantastic references and content. We'll
put maybe links to the studies that I've mentioned as well.
Yes,
so
please.
You've all got the resources. Steal our slides.
Steal our slides. I love that. I mean, I do.
I'm fun.
Putting them on the website is great. Jen or Jennifer?
Any of the above. Jen, Jennifer.
I'm going Jen. Sweetie, thank you so much for joining me today. Honestly, it's been amazing. I've learned so much. I know our listeners will love too. Big thank you.
Thanks for having me.